It's said that we all die twice. Once when we physically die, and again when no one remembers who we are. But in this modern day, I believe we actually die 3 times. Once when we physically die, again when no one remembers who we are, and then finally when you no longer appear in search results on the internet. For the first time in human history, you can live online forever in a state of digital immortality. How cool is that? Your unique story can live online for eternity. But with digital life, there must be digital death. And that's where our problems begin. But let's start with life. You have a virtual you. A vast online presence that you add to every single day with videos and emails and cheeky comments. And this second life will outlive you. And I'm not talking about just passing on your finest Facebook photos and your wittiest tweets. This goes deeper. This is about capturing those memories that make you, you. I'm talking about the story of your first kiss, or those friends from school that you miss, or the time that you laughed until you cried, or the heartbreak when the love of your life moved to Dubai. And this is a privilege. 30 years ago, this wasn't a thing. 30 years ago, if you died, then you would leave behind some photo albums and some scratchy VHS tapes. But today, we are making that information every single day. So what I'm saying is, you don't need to be Shakespeare for your story to live on. You don't need to be Dickens or Descartes. You can be Debbie from Doncaster, and you will live forwards. Because you have a story to tell. We all do. We are human beings. We are storytellers. It's what we do. I'm Paul, and I run a company called Death. I was a baby once. There's me with my mum. I'm the little one on the right. And when I was a kid, I was a bit of a clown. And when I grew up, I was sure that I was going to grow up to be a superhero. Until I got a bit older and I realized, no, I want to be a singer in a grunge band. And as you can tell, I have made some fashion faux pas in my time. We call this one Chubby Mullet Baby Double Denim Edition. But I've also done some really cool things as well. I've ran some marathons. I've been published. And I've got some of the finest friends anyone could ever hope to have. And I want to tell you about one of my friends. This is Jim. I met Jim in college, and we just clicked. You know those people you meet and you just think, yeah, we're going to get on well. Jim was one of those. In fact, we were so in sync that at one point we once turned up to a party wearing the exact same outfit. Same Rolling Stones t-shirt and everything. It was ridiculous. Now, my story about Jim starts 8 years ago. It was a chilly March Monday morning, and I'd just gotten into work. There was no one else around, so when my phone rang, I went to pick it up. And it was Jim's home number calling. And that was a bit weird, because Jim was in Leicester the night before for an awards ceremony, not back in Somerset. But you don't think too much about it. You just pick it up with the usual, hello, mate. How did last night go? But the voice that spoke back to me wasn't Jim. It was Jim's mum. Jim's mum told me that last night, Jim died. He got hit by a car. Now, I don't remember much of the conversation that followed that, except I do remember that I was crying. And I also don't remember driving home afterwards. But even to this day, I can't listen to the album that was in the car at the time. And I waited at home all day, waiting for them to confirm that the body was Jim. And it was. And then I was asked, would I start telling all our friends? And I did. One by one, I told all my friends. And each time I heard them break, I broke a bit more inside. But you find it's these things that you do. And we together, we got through them. And there was a funeral, and I spoke at the funeral. And little by little, things slowly returned to some sense of normality. Until a few months later, I get a message from my friend Laura. She's concerned, and she says, Paul, Jim's online. She says, Jim's online, and he's talking. Except Jim wasn't talking, Jim was tweeting. And these weren't the usual witty jokes and jovial wisecracks. These tweets were selling sunglasses. Jim's Twitter had been hacked. And that was confusing. That was weird. I was angry. Somebody had stolen my friend's voice. But I got it sorted. I spoke to Twitter, and they were great, and we got the tweets removed, and we got it locked down. But for me, the damage was done. And I didn't cope with it at all well, to the point that I actually moved to Italy just to escape those memories for a little while. Now, I don't want anyone to have to deal with this if we can help it. So today, I run a company dedicated to helping people get their death in order, to ensure that you can live online in a way that represents you for eternity. Now, my team and I, we're working on lots of things to do with the end of life. But the thing that I am fascinated about is this sense of digital immortality or digital death. So what exactly is digital death? Well, simply put, digital death is what happens to your online life after you die. You can think of it like a big virtual gravestone, or you can think of it as a bucket of paint. Now, if you dip your fingers into that bucket of paint and flick it at a wall, you're going to end up with some big blobs, small smudges, and some speckles everywhere. It'll look like a big, messy Jackson Pollock. And that is what your digital legacy looks like if you don't curate it. But how much of a problem really is it? How many accounts do you actually have? You know, you've got Facebook, you do a bit of WhatsApp, maybe you do some online banking. But then you've got Netflix, you do that online shop once a week. Oh, and you signed up to that website to get the discount on those pillows. Do you remember? How many accounts do you actually have? Is it 25, 45? Well, I'm a pretty average internet user, and I have 90 accounts. 90 online accounts. And that is just accounts. Now let's throw in 5 years' worth of Facebook photos. On average, we upload 54 photos each per person to Facebook per year. It's about 5 a month or thereabouts, so it's not unreasonable. But now let's add in everything else. What about your Instagram pictures? What about your email? What about your messages, your cookie data? What about GPS data? What about all those posts that you don't even create yourself because somebody else has tagged you in them? You start to realize just how much there could be out there about you. So much so that it's predicted by next year, we will be creating 40 times more bytes of data than there are stars in our observable universe each day. You are creating a universe of you. And just like the universe around us, yours is always expanding. Now, with that context, I said that there are some problems with digital death. And there are some problems. And I'm not going to give you all of them because there's a fair few, but I'll give you a few examples. Number one, you can get hacked. Jim got hacked. But it's not always for nefarious reasons. Sometimes it can be seemingly quite innocent. In her book, All the Ghosts in the Machine, author Elaine Karskit gives an amazing example where, sadly, a young girl dies. And her mum finds that her laptop is still accessible and she can access her daughter's Facebook. And she scrolls through her daughter's Facebook, looking at the messages, looking at the newsfeed, keeping her daughter's voice alive. It's understandable. Until one day she's scrolling and she sees that her daughter's ex-boyfriend has moved on. He's announced a new relationship. And quick as a flash, she types, Don't you think it's a little bit soon to be falling in love again? But she is still logged in as her daughter. So all this poor boy sees is the ghost of his dead ex-girlfriend scolding him from beyond the grave. Problem number 2, they can steal your face. I don't mean in a Frankenstein or Stephen King sort of way, but with holograms and CGI. Today, we have the capability to digitally take your face and your voice and paint it onto that of another actor. We can even do it with already recorded video. They call this deep fakes, and sometimes it's used for really funny reasons, and sometimes it's political, but this being the age of the internet, it's usually used for porn. But the point is, the living can take back control. The dead can't. Just last week, it was announced that James Dean, the rebel without a cause, who died 50 years ago, is about to be digitally resurrected and brought back to life to star in his own movie next year. And there's been pushback, there's been uproar. Is this morally correct? Is it ethically okay? But we've been doing this for years. This is Audrey Hepburn, one of the most glamorous, most amazing movie stars of all time. In 2014, her face was digitally painted onto that of another actor, and she was brought back to life to sell chocolate bars. And in 2013, Bruce Lee was brought back with the exact same technology, and he was used to sell whiskey. But Bruce Lee didn't drink. So would he have consented to this? We'll never know, because Bruce Lee died over 40 years ago when this technology was pure science fiction. But you're probably thinking, look, I don't care if somebody takes my face. Good luck to them. Okay, I want something that's actually going to matter to me. Well, here are a couple examples that will affect you. We don't know how to safely and legally pass our digital assets on to our next of kin after we die. For example, you can't put a password in a will. Not just because every time you update that password, you'd have to update your will, but because wills become public documents. So it would be insecure to put your passwords in there. But this goes one step further than that. In most parts of the planet, if you die without a will, then your property, your money, your assets will pass on to your next of kin. Be it your mum, your sister, your partner, your daughter. But this isn't the case with data. Earlier this year, there was a high-profile court case here in Britain. A 14-year-old girl, sadly, had taken her own life. And her parents wanted to know why. And they were sure that maybe there would be some clues hidden in her social media. Maybe if they could get those Facebook messages, they'd be able to find out why she did it. When they approached Facebook, Facebook pushed back. Because while they may be the parents of this 14-year-old girl, they are not the account holder. Which brings me to what I believe is the biggest issue we're all going to be facing. Who owns your data after you die? And what's protecting your data after you die? In life, we enjoy data protection acts like GDPR that make sure that our most private data, our most personal information, is kept private, and it cannot be used by other people without your consent. But these privacy laws only apply to the living. Let that sink in. All those rights and protections you enjoy right now do not apply after you die. Now, there are a few caveats to that, obviously. But the thing that I am fascinated by is that if you wrote a book, that book is protected under copyright for years after you die because it is deemed your intellectual property. Therefore, you maintain ownership over that. But shouldn't your private information be your private property? Shouldn't your private property enjoy the same protections as when you're alive after you die? I think it should. And I want us to change this in law. I want our government to change this to protect all of us after we die. But this is a big problem. So what can you do to take control? You can take control of your personal story. And it's pretty easy to do. In fact, you can do it with 3 steps. Number 1, give yourself a Google. Simply unleash your inner narcissist and just type your name into a search engine. You might be surprised at what you see, you might not, but at least you know what is out there about you. Number 2, make a plan. Maybe you want all your accounts deleted. Maybe you want them left as they are. Or perhaps you want to appoint somebody to look after them after you die. Make a plan and jot it down. Don't leave it to your loved ones to decide after you die. It's not fair. They've already lost you. Don't make them have a decision as to whether or not to delete this piece of you from the internet. And finally, have a conversation. You need to make people aware of what your wishes are. So if you have ever been down the pub and you said, mate, if I ever get hit by a bus, please delete my browser history, then you've already started doing exactly this. Because remember, in this modern day, we now die 3 times. Once when you physically die. Again, when nobody remembers who you are. And then finally, when you no longer appear in search results on the internet. So when your descendants in 100 years' time look back at who you are, and they will, make sure they see a true representation of you and ensure you're not being misrepresented for eternity by your very own chubby mullet baby. Thank you.